I'm glad that you've come back. I appreciate you taking some time to listen today and watch these little blogs. It's been interesting the last week or so, the feedback that I've gotten. Incidentally, sometimes there's not a lot of feedback that you see on the blogs. They're hidden, or I get different points of communication. I'm always grateful for it, even though some are a little bit harder to swallow. But today I'm going to continue the thoughts of a little bit of a harder hitting blog. And today's called, Are You Frustrated Enough? Because I'll tell you, a book came out several years ago. I didn't have time to research it, but it was called The Tipping Point. And it's not an infidelity book, but it's a description of how change kind of happens. There's usually this, what they call tipping point, or boiling point, where in an organization or a situation or even a person, there's a point where you just have had enough and change happens. Could be positive, could be negative. And there's a small community within a mass amount of people that I have to ask a question, which is, are you frustrated enough to take action? And it goes like this for the unfaithful. It's, well, they won't do this, and my spouse won't do this, and she or he, they won't change, they won't do any work, or they won't do this. And I say, okay, I get that because I understand it, but what are you doing for you? And a lot of unfaithful spouses don't realize that even though your spouse won't do work, you can do work. And one of the best ways to get your spouse to see the seriousness of your commitment to getting healthy is you doing work even in the face of uncertainty of whether or not they're coming back again. So that when they do talk to you and you're able to say, yeah, I'm taking this Hope for Healing course, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, they'll say, oh, well, that's good. Okay. Or they may go, well, good, I'm glad. You're the problem anyway. They're flooding, they're having a moment. The fact is, you've got to do work. If you're not doing work, I don't know if you're frustrated enough at your situation. For the betrayed, there's lots of times where the betrayed will say, well, they won't do this and they won't do that, and I don't know how to get him to move, and he won't get help or she won't get help. And I say, well, have you considered taking some of the power back? Have you considered doing work for you? Have you considered putting some expectations, and if there's not going to be any movement, having there be some consequences? And deciding that you're not codependent on them and that you don't have to sit back and have them decide what recovery looks like. Are you doing that? And sometimes, unfortunately, a large part of the time, it's no, I haven't done that. And I have to say, well, when's the tipping point going to come where you say enough is enough? I am not a slave. I am not codependent. I am not a prisoner to your choices. Because we can complain. I did this. Yes. I would complain about Samantha. Oh, Rick, well, she won't do this, and I'll never, ever forget a time I was sick. I was in my backyard, and I had to have a phone session with Rick because I couldn't come in. And I was sitting on my swing underneath this beautiful tree that we have in our backyard. And I was so mad. And at one point, I was like, man, I'm talking to Rick so aggressively and disrespectfully. I wonder if this sounds as bad as it sounds to me. And I asked Rick, I go, do I sound like a expletive? And he goes, oh yeah, you're way overboard, but I love you, so keep going. So, I mean, it happens. And I was just all of these things. And he said, well, I get it, but let me ask you something. What are you doing for you? And I just was kind of stopped in my tracks. And he said, what are you doing to help you cope? Have you read this book? I said, well, no, I haven't gotten it yet. Well, have you gone to an AA meeting? No, I've been sick. And he named a few things, and I said, no. And he goes, well, if you can't get Samantha to do these things, maybe you should take ownership and do some things that you know you should be doing. And I hated him for that, but he was exactly right. Just recently, over the past 2 years, I had some real health issues. And I kind of had to come to the point where I was frustrated enough to make some changes in my diet. And when I made those changes, I saw a huge swing to the health issues I was dealing with. But I had to get frustrated enough, I had to hit that tipping point. And there's a point in recovery work, especially from infidelity, where until the pain of an event exceeds the pleasure of an event, there isn't going to be change. So if your unfaithful spouse can just keep doing what they're doing and there's no consequences, there's no pain, there's no difficulty, there's no challenge on your part, they're not going to change. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. And so I have to ask, a lot of times, the betrayed spouse, are you frustrated enough yet where you're ready to take some action? And they'll say, well, what action can I take? And then I'll kind of share some things and they'll say, ooh, I didn't think about that. And I said, well, you have to think. You have to pray if you're a praying person. You need to really give some thought to taking the power back and deciding that you have had enough, that the tipping point is now here, that you are frustrated enough to take action. A final question is, have you reached a point where it's more painful to stay at the place that you're at than it is to at least pursue the next phase of healing, the next phase of personal growth? Are you frustrated enough where the pain that what you're dealing with right now is enough to make you really say, you know what? This pain hurts so bad. It's not going to be worse than the pain I feel trying to get healthy, trying to heal, trying to remedy the chaos, trying to take action. I am more concerned about getting healthy for the next few decades of my life than I am to remain stuck and just sit here in this pain. So finally, are you frustrated enough? Are you angry enough? Have you had enough to finally take some action in your recovery?